Hey there, hi there, ho there, Carolyn J. Carpenter with Hollywood Gatekeepers here. Super excited to have you guys here. Super excited to be here today. We're gonna be, sorry, just getting that shot a little better. So we are diving in. We're doing something a little bit different than what we normally do on our lives on the first Monday of each month. I'm diving in more often actually to give you excerpts from our masterclass. So we have a masterclass where I dive in and I give you all the nuances of being a reader, like compensation and all of the things that have to do with it. Like we really go deep inside of the masterclass. And if you haven't gone to that, you should go to hollywoodgatekeepers.com/free masterclass and you can dive in and you can learn all the nuances. But I thought it would also be good to dive in and just do these quick lives where I take a piece of the masterclass and talk about it here. And one of the things that kind of the more obvious thing to talk about is, what does a reader do? What does a reader do? What is a reader exactly? And so I thought I would just dive in, do a quick session here, not take too much of your time, but dive in so you can start thinking about what does a reader do. So I see you showing up. Nice to see you guys here. What does a reader do? So a reader is someone who reads. Sorry, can't resist. Someone who reads screenplays. So it's an actual thing. There are people that read screenplays for a living. We read screenplays and we are trained to know what works in that screenplay. We read it to see if the story works. We are all about the story. The reader is one of the few people that is solely focused on if the story works in a screenplay. A lot of people are focused on a lot of other things that have to do with that screenplay, but we're always coming from, does it work for the story? So a reader knows if a story is universal. A reader knows if a story is authentic. A reader knows if the characters are authentic and why. So I was about to say, readers can tell you why things are working and not working. So we are very trained. We've trained a lot in how to analyze screenplays. And so that's what a reader does. We read that screenplay. And then the second thing we do is we analyze it and write what is known as coverage. And coverage is kind of like a book report, kind of going back to junior high, doing that book report. So you read that screenplay, and then in the coverage, you give all the details about what genre it is, how many pages it is, who wrote it, all of that. You also give a log line, you say what the movie is about in just a couple of sentences. And then you go into what is it about. You write a page and a half on what is that story about. You take it right through the story, picking out all of the plot points that matter, leaving maybe some of the subplots out, like really kind of diving into the basics of the story. What is it about? And then you write comments on that story about what works in the screenplay and what needs work in the screenplay. So that's basically the general job of a reader. Read that screenplay, write that coverage. Read that screenplay, write that coverage. That's the day in and day out. So the third thing that I want you to know about what a reader does is kind of who do we do this for? And the first person is a producer. So for producers, we read that story, we write that coverage so that a producer doesn't have to read the screenplay right out the gate. They can read your coverage instead because they'll see, what is this story about? So they can see, does this story fit into the kinds of stories that I want to produce, right? So producers are insanely busy, and we are kind of making it easy for them because we're taking that first step. The screenplay comes across our desk. We look at it. We write the coverage. We say, is this screenplay worthy of moving forward? We give that coverage to the producer, and then they decide on the next step, whether it's to meet with the writer, read the screenplay, whatever that might be. That's the first person that we read screenplays to. Another person that we read screenplays for is a writer. We read screenplays for writers. So writers, and if you are a writer, I highly, highly recommend that you have a reader take a look at your screenplay before you submit it to anything. Contests, agents, lawyers, managers, producers, wherever you're trying to get that screenplay going, have a reader take a look at it first. So the reader will give you feedback, will tell you what is your story about, and if you're a writer, it's good to see what someone else thinks your story is about, because it might be different than what you think your story is about. So it's really beneficial for a writer to get that feedback about what is their story about, and then what does the reader think works in that story, and what does the reader think needs work in that story. And then the final aspect, and like I said, these are like little pop-in moments where I'm going to really kind of just pop in, give you the idea so that you have this to kind of mull about. And so the final thing is that a reader really does change the world. I know this sounds kind of crazy, like that we're jumping from analyzing screenplays to changing the world, but the way that we talk about it here in Hollywood Gatekeepers and in all of our programs is that that story is so important, right? People are writing these screenplays. The person that is passionate enough to sit down and actually write the screenplay, actually finish a screenplay to the point that where they're submitting it to where it comes across your desk. I mean, I have the utmost respect for people that get that far, because there's so many people that say they're going to write a screenplay and never do it. Thousands, if not millions of people do that. But there's only a handful that actually write every day and get that screenplay done. So as readers, it's a precious thing. Like, we're taking that story and we're figuring out, how can we get this script to the screen? We want the story to be good. Producers want the story to be good. They want to find the next big thing. And that's where we come across. So when we're taking that story and we're helping define what works and doesn't work in that story, we're helping define the voice of that writer, right? We're there to say, hey, I'm with you. It's a job of service. We're in this together. How can we get the best voice out of you as possible so we can get that script on the screen? And then for producers, how can we find those stories that bring like universal themes and things that are authentic and characters that we can really dive into, and diverse stories? How can we help get more voices onto the screen that we've never heard from before? This is important, right? And this is how it changes the world, because we're reaching for those stories that are unique. We're reaching for those stories that inspire others, so that then when a moviegoer goes to see that film, they're inspired. Their life is changed, even if it's something that's what they might call fluff, or an action film that's just seemingly unimportant, as they say, in terms of like the grand scheme of life. But it's not unimportant, because it's taking a moment for that person and it's allowing them to escape from whatever their daily life is, to have a moment of fun, to have a moment of meaning, to have, if it's a fun, silly comedy, they're getting a moment of laughter. They release all this anxiety they might have and they get a moment where they're away from it, right? And there's also stories that are incredibly meaningful, that do historical pieces that really help us learn about other cultures and other people and how this happened and how that happened, and stories that we may not have even heard of that have changed our lives that we're not even aware of, right? So all of these stories matter, from all of the different places they come. They all have a place. And so when we're doing that and we're getting that script to the screen, we are changing the world, because we're finding these voices, we're finding these stories, we're helping producers get there. So I'm really obviously very passionate about it. We talk about it a lot in our programs of helping that writer find that authentic voice. And so as a reader, we read that screenplay, we write that coverage, we help that writer, we help that producer, and we change the world. Simple. So I hope you enjoy learning more about being a reader. If you want to learn even more, all the different nuances, you can take the masterclass. It's totally free. It's on demand now. You can take it whenever you want. It's at hollywoodgatekeepers.com/free masterclass. And stay tuned. We're going to do more of these as I pop in and I give you little pieces about what it is to be a reader. I'm so honored that you're here, so honored that you take this time with us. I want to continue to do these so that you continue to learn more about what it is to be a reader and what it is to be a Hollywood gatekeeper, helping those writers, serving those producers, and changing the world. All right, you guys, we'll talk to you soon.